It's the story of a psychiatrist, U.S. Army psychiatrist, who at the end of World War II was given some orders to go and evaluate the surviving Nazi high command to see if they could be put on trial for the war crimes that occurred during World War II. And at the same time, it's the story of Robert H. Jackson, played by Michael Shannon, who is trying to convince the government that the trials need to take place. And once he does, becomes the lead prosecutor for the United States. I mean, I started working on this 13 years ago, and it was that was the thing that really fascinated me about this was I'd never heard the story of Doug Kelly, and I thought this was a fascinating way in. I didn't even know the U.S. Army had psychiatrists, and so the idea of these two men coming together in this sort of psychological duel between Rami's character Doug Kelly and Herman Goring, who's played by Russell Crowe, and this these two men are sort of trying to one up each other and get something out of the other one, but at the same time, I think find some commonalities in each other they didn't expect to. That was incredibly fascinating.
I prepared by reading this delicious script that Jamie wrote. I mean, simply put, it was one of those things that you fly through immediately. Those are the things I've responded to in my career, and I know that's a no-brainer. And then we got on the phone. I read Jack's book, The Nazi and the Psychiatrist, and that was, when there is something original to revert back to, there's a wealth of knowledge there. But there was so much inherently in your script, sir, that was a kind of blueprint for me. I was very aware of the history, but to your point, all the surprises that I discovered throughout this story, the first trial that was ever filmed, there was something fascinating about how that could actually be used in court on such an epic scale. It's the 80th year of the Nuremberg trials, the anniversary. It's the 50th year of the Toronto Film Festival, and I think having those things co-align is quite poignant at the moment. But back to your original question, I remember doing Mr. Robot. I was coming up with these ideas and talking to Sam Esmail, and he's like, "You know the psychology about this guy inside and out." And I said, "I hired a psychiatrist to start working." Yeah, not for me, but yes. And so we finally got her on set for that, and I thought I'd do the same personally for this. And I said, "Can you describe Herman Goering to me?" And she said, "Well, he's a classic narcissist, Douglas Kelly, classic obsessive, just wants to get the job done." And I think what he really wanted was to discover whether, evil was inherent in human beings, but also do the job. There's something about just doing the job. And I think we all know that psychiatrists take the good, the bad, and the ugly. And sometimes there is a relationship to a patient where I think you have the ability to appreciate them in a certain way that, and outside of that sphere, you might not otherwise have. And I found that fascinating. It was the attraction he had to this man, for all his indiscretions. He discovered some humanity in him, possibly some of that same ugliness in himself in a way. And I think that's what made it a very complex character for me to study, with the reflection of having that evil right there in front of you in this suffocating space that was created by Eve Stewart and Darius Wolski and, of course, Jamie Vanderbilt. We shot in cells. We didn't remove walls to put in a camera. We had every operator in the room, every camera assistant.
We built all the. It was a set, but we built everything to scale. And as Rami said, Darius Wolski, the cinematographer, and I made a deal with each other that even though we could pull the walls, we weren't going to do it. So if it meant it's not going to be as pretty a shot, and the camera operator is going to be up here, but you'll feel the claustrophobia of it, we wanted to make sure that we did it that way.
The task of playing him is analogous to the task of what Jackson was doing. I mean, I have no business playing a Supreme Court justice. I would never be on the Supreme Court if there were only, 9 people left on Earth. I don't think they'd pick me to be on the Supreme Court. But you find yourself in these situations as an actor, and the thing about Jackson that Jamie reminded me of the other day is he didn't even go to law school. So he was an autodidact. He taught himself everything he knew, And so he was kind of a fearless individual and a very intelligent individual. And I think people that accomplish things like Jackson accomplished, they just kind of take the word impossible out of their vocabulary. You know, there's nothing that's impossible. You know, and he was told repeatedly that nobody wanted to do what he wanted to do, but he knew it was the right thing to do, and he just was relentless about it. I think that's a quality I admire most in human beings because there's so many forces in the world telling you, don't try and do that's ridiculous. Just stay in your lane and do what you're supposed to do, and don't try and overcome this obstacle. And he never did that. But I mean, how I prepare to do it, I don't know. Again, to Rami's point, Jamie spent 13 years working on this script. It's a beautiful script, and I was very excited to get to say it out loud. So I learned it, and then I said it out loud.
You did all of those things
Yeah.
brilliantly.
To a degree where, and you could probably describe this best, the experience of being in that courtroom. Am I putting you on the spot, sir?
Yes, you are.
Forgive me.
Well, I mean, I was about to ask you a question. So, yes, please speak to how you embodied Maxwell 5. Yeah.
He was a British prosecutor and kind of lieutenant to Michael's character. The combination of the script and the gift of YouTube is that you have the entire trial on YouTube, so you can see the character that you're playing, the real person, in the real set, which was recreated by Eve Stewart, the production designer, to within a millimetre of what the original was, which that verisimilitude was extraordinary in itself. What Rami is referring to is that there was a 18-page scene where Michael is delivering his final denouement to Russell Crowe's Goering, and I come in like a sort of stealth bomber at the end of that to find some loophole that hopefully will convict this man finally. And it had been scheduled over 2 days. Michael was on a Monday. I was only coming in on the Tuesday. So, you know, emotionally you think, okay, I've got a breather. So he has to do all the hefty work. And then this bastard came 20 minutes before we were due to shoot it and said, I know we're scheduled to do it tomorrow. Could you just do your, if you stumble around, don't worry. And then we started the take with, all the extras, whole crew, and Michael, Matt Rushmore, delivering an absolute tour de force. And then you have to try and follow that. And what was extraordinary is that at the end of this cumulative combination of the dialogue, the situation that we were in, the historical impact of the fact that the Hungarian extras, especially the older ones, had lived through Nazi occupation, followed by communism, and spontaneously, and you can't predict any of that is going to happen, there was a standing ovation from people who, for the majority of them, didn't speak very good English, if at all, but the emotional impact of what Michael delivered and what the scene was electrifying.
Because I remember asking Rose, because I didn't want to be presumptuous, because I'm kind of used to I do a lot of theater, so it's not a big deal for me to do a 20. I learned a 90-minute one-man show once, so I can do it. But I wanted to check in with Russell, and Russell was game too, and in a way, what Russell had to do was, I would argue, more daunting than what I was doing, because I was on a mission, and he was trying to, he's fighting for his life up there, and he's, like you were saying earlier, the whole idea of inherent evil. He's going through the experience of recognizing that may be true about himself, I believe, in that scene, because he's been deflecting it. Because I don't think anybody wants to be made aware of the fact that they're inherently evil. I think they want to keep that at bay as long as possible. But I think in the course of that scene, I can feel him realizing oh, I am this person. I am what they say I am.
I do want to say just about that scene. What was incredible for me was we had it scheduled originally, not for Richard to come in, but over 3 days for the cross examination. And the first AD said, "Okay, we're going to do the first, the first third on the first day, the second third." And I said, "These guys aren't going to want to do that. They're going to want to go at each other. They're not going to want to stop. They're going to want to do." She goes, "Well, this is 20 pages of dialogue." I said, "Yeah." And I checked with Michael and I checked with Russell, and they both were like, "Oh yeah, there's no way we want to stop in the middle of that." And so we, on the day we set 4 cameras, and we just let them go at each other, and it was one of the most amazing days I've ever had on a set in my life. It was incredible.
The script, I think the character provides a bit of relief, comic or otherwise, in the process of trying to rein in his frustrations at his assignment, which was to maintain order and discipline and keep these guys, this Nazi high command from killing themselves. So his job was to preside over this prison with the eyes of the world awaiting this trial and make sure that these men were delivered to this trial and so that the trial could take place. And I think everybody, with the question of the inherent evil, I mean, everybody had very strong opinions by the end of World War II about this regime. But it was their job to put those feelings aside and handle the assignment given. And so that's what the colonel did. And had a very decorated, illustrious military career, and then was assigned this very difficult task at the end of his tour.
It's a very important film. We're very, very proud of it. I mean, it's an extraordinary moment in history. I think it reflects the past, the present, the future, and I think it's important to share it with everyone at this moment, and hopefully it's galvanizing and informative. I think there's so many surprises that will be, as we all were, unaware of what actually happened in that period, in that specific moment in time. And the actually initial thing I wanted to say is you're looking at a bunch of blokes, a bunch of men up here, but there are some equally, if not more talented partners in this who are not here, from Ren to Lydia to
Lotta,
Lotta,
no, it's
and,
amazing. The actresses.
and this beautiful little actor that you found,
Oh, lovely Leo.
Leo. I think we're all quite proud of it and happy to share it for you. So thank you for taking the time.